This video is brought to you by CuriosityStream. Get 31 days of streaming completely free using the link curiositystream.com/featurehistory, or you can wait till the end to hear more. Hello and welcome back to Featurette, because you weren't expecting that, were you? Me to start a series and actually continue it. But based on the reception to my last video on cars, you were all very disappointed I didn't talk about technicals, and specifically the Toyota Hilux. So what better way to make amends than do a whole video on Toyotas, highlighting the Great Toyota War, and then you guys can repay the favour by helping me pay the bills. Yeah? Sick. So, to set the scene of the Toyota War, we're gonna have to set the scene. It's the 60s, and Africa has just recently been split from its European colonisers, and with all great changes in history, it's accompanied by a lot of violence. All the new nations were finding their footing, and civil wars, coups and rebellions were everywhere. So it would be in 1969 that the now notorious, and now also dead dictator, Muammar Gaddafi would lead a coup in his home of Libya. Gaddafi came to power on an agenda of Arab nationalism, and it was fundamental to him that he took a stand for decolonisation, and also to secure strategic resources and political assets for his militaristic regime. These combined goals led to him pursuing claim on the AGILE Strip, a section of land on Libya's border with the former French colony and currently civil war-ridden Chad. Gaddafi's intervention in his southern neighbour's affairs started with him securing allegiance and supplying rebel groups against Chad's authoritarian president, Francois Tombalbaye. However, he was soon able to enter negotiations and just straight up buy the AGILE Strip for £40 million. It was a sizable area of land, but it was mostly desert with a small population that was concentrated in the town of AGILE. Its only attraction was its rumoured uranium deposits, but also its annexation just served as a fantastic display of Libyan prowess. So for 3 straight years, Libya fair and square owned the AGILE Strip, up until in 1975, Francois Tombalbaye was overthrown, and the rebel groups responsible were not fans of their former dictator's Libyan appeasement. Gaddafi would reopen hostilities and continue his support for Libyan-friendly rebels against the new government. Across a series of interventions by the Libyan military directly, and also a handful from France in support of Chad, a line would be drawn in 1983, separating government and rebel forces. Libya was left with virtual control of northern Chad. Now, the Libyan military far outclassed the poorly equipped Chadian militias. Libya was stocked with old Soviet aircraft, armour and artillery, and held control over the admittedly few strategic garrisons in the Chadian Sahara. However, by 1987, the Libyans had lost the support of the local rebels, and so despite their resources, the Libyan defence consisted of isolated conscripts with low morale. The Chadian government, under the leadership of Hissène Habré, would be provided with 400 Toyota Hilux and Land Cruiser Utes, ready to be equipped with anti-tank guided missiles, light anti-air, heavy machine guns, and so on. The French had provided the Chadians the unconventional weapons, as well as pledging air support, all in hopes of seeing the Chadians reclaim the north from Libya. It may sound pretty weird that Chad's international support came in the form of civilian Toyotas, but improvising fighting vehicles wasn't an unfounded tactic. In fact, stretching the definition of a vehicle, you can point to First World War Russian Tachunkers as an early example. Horse-drawn machine guns that were perfect for hit-and-run combat on the wide-open Eastern Front. The British Commonwealth iterated on that in the Second World War, when they armed light jeeps with turrets for use in the long-range desert group, who saw great success in their North African raids. The historical tactic though falls apart in tough, mountainous and jungle warfare, which was the bulk of most post-Second World War conflicts. That is, up until the 80s. So the Chadians would make the most of these Toyotas when they opened the offensive against Libya by striking the well-fortified communication base in FADA. Defended by 2,000 Libyans bolstered by armour and artillery, they were defeated by 5,000 men, French air support and some trusty Japanese Utes. After this success, they moved for Libya's airstrip, defended by even more armour, artillery, air force and even a minefield. French air support forced the Libyans to stay grounded, and the Chadians discovered that when driving 100 km an hour, they didn't trigger the mines and could roll straight up to the airstrip. Another victory for the ragtag army. As soon as Habré had secured northern Chad in those few short months, he was ready to continue the initiative and take back the Alzao Strip. Now that was against the French's wishes, and so now the Chadians moved without air support. They were able to take the town of Alzao, but when met with Libyan counterattacks, were forced to abandon it. These Toyota tactics just wouldn't work when it came to defending. So in September 2000, Chadians drove across the border into Libya. Blacked out under moonlight, concealing themselves in the valleys and hills, they made their way north of Libya's main airbase, Matan al-Sara. Garrisoned by 2,500 men, over 70 tanks, 30 APCs and around 30 aircraft, the Chadians were outnumbered and easily outgunned. But their raid came as such a surprise when they were spotted coming from the north. It was believed to be reinforcements, and by the time it was realised they weren't, they had reached the airbase. The cars were too agile to be targeted accurately by aircraft and were able to strafe and down tanks with surprising efficiency. Libyan casualties were between 1,000 and 1,700 men. All their vehicles were downed and their airstrips were torn up. The Chadians had lost 65 men and a few Toyotas. The raiders left as soon as they had arrived, and the defeat was crushing to Gaddafi's military strongman image. It was then the dictator tried to save face and took a conciliatory outlook, signing a ceasefire and letting go of the Alzao Strip back to Chad, which was, in his words, his gift to Africa. The Chadians' underdog victory hit headlines in the West, and it became known as the Great Toyota War. However, as we all know, entering the 21st century, the use of Toyotas and other four-wheel drive utes in war would become very commonplace. The Somali civil war in the 90s saw the fall of their national army, and armoured vehicles became impossible to finance and run, and so the warlords and their factions quickly took to creating what became known as technicals. Using Toyotas and other brands of four-wheel drive utes, they would be kitted out with all the same guns used in the Chadians' war. These cars became symbols of prestige for militias, and the same commander that had beaten back the US at the Battle of Mogadishu, Mohammed Farah Aidid, was carried to his grave in the tray of a Toyota Land Cruiser. And Somalia is the reason we call these gun cars technicals. Non-governmental organisations working in the country couldn't bring in their own private security, and so using technical assistance grants, hired local militias for protection, and these Somali-sourced security services just about always ran these vehicles. As wars have continued to spring up in the open desert environments such as Iraq, Afghanistan and Syria, the technicals appeared more and more. In Afghanistan, even the well-funded US Special Forces took to using the vehicles for recon operations. So many non-state militias and weak armed forces employed the use of technicals. The Islamic State had made a name for itself with its endless convoys of Land Cruisers. The vehicles, while not armoured and not designed for war, are designed perfectly for a budget. Their speed allows them to avoid unfavourable fights and respond quickly to where they're needed. They require no specialised training to drive, they're so much more fuel efficient compared to a tank, and just about anyone with a spanner, 2 hands and 1 functional brain can maintain them. So it's given all these reasons that they're now iconic in 21st century conflict, where war is closely associated with desert combat and militia fighters. And that's why today, even modern armies are beginning to research and develop in hosting their own fleets of technical-like vehicles. Russia has begun production on its domestically made UAZ Patriot, which is designed to drive like a Hilux, be reliable like a Hilux, and cost as much as a Hilux, just without the Toyota badge. And an interesting side note to add, it is such an advantage to have your military rolling around on as least fuel as possible, especially when all the fighting and destruction is happening on the very oil fields you'd need to fuel your car. Oil is important in war, it's important to politics, and it's important in me segueing into the sponsor, the CuriosityStream. because on CuriosityStream I was able to watch an old ABC documentary called Crude, which tells you just about everything you'd possibly want to know about oil. And when you're done watching that, or if you don't watch that, I don't judge, you can check out the thousands of other documentaries and originals on the streaming service. They cover history, science, nature, technology, society and more. And whatever device you're watching this video on, you can also watch CuriosityStream. So head over to curiositystream.com/featurehistory and get yourself that 31-day trial. And it's worth adding that not only will a membership to CuriosityStream get you their service, but it'll also give you an account to Nebula, which is also a streaming service that features educational channels, like myself, and hosts all our video libraries as well as exclusive originals ad-free. So that's a 2-for-1, and a good one at that. So head into the description and you'll find both those sites there, and at least one of them will pique your curiosity. I'm going to now thank the patrons, because I forgot to do that in the last short video I did. Oops, sorry. And speaking of the patrons, I want to get around to revamping the Patreon soon, because, well, I should be doing more with that, especially if I want to be able to do more videos. So watch out for maybe an announcement video, and if you don't give a shit about that, then I hope to put an actual video out not too long from now. So you'll see me then. Ta-ta!